Heyo, what's up guys? In today's video we're gonna be reacting to Preseason 12 because Riot just released Preseason 2022 instead of game, so they just came out with an update and we're basically gonna be reacting to what they say and gonna be talking a little bit about it. But yeah, let's just start the video. So first topic is state of the game.
Overall, we're pretty happy with the state of League this season, but before we get into the details, let's dive into a topic that's been pretty popular lately, which is new champion balance. When we look at the data, we actually see that new champions have been pretty balanced on release this year, with the exception of Dr. Mundo. That said, there's more to healthy gameplay than just win rates, and we're still hearing that new champions feel unfair to play against, particularly when it comes to complex abilities or overloaded kits.
Well, everyone should know at this point that newer champions are generally gonna have a stronger kit than champions that got released in earlier seasons. So a champion like Ashe is gonna be pretty much completely useless against a champion that is, Samira, Akshan, Kiana, Gwen, anything like that. So
if we're being completely honest, we don't think our champions have overloaded kits overall.
Okay. That's really interesting because I feel like there are many broken abilities that make you become immune, make you not be able to take any damage. Reviving your entire team, like all these new things that you introduce is so unique to one champion that in very specific situations, okay, maybe not even just in very specific, but in a lot of situations, that champion's kit is just so broken, especially if you compare a season 10 or 11 champion to a season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 champion. Like, I don't know.
That being said, there have been times when we've given new champions too many tools and had to pull back later to give them more clear weaknesses. For example, Samira's ability to dash to allies was removed because it provided too much safety. Combined with her missile blocker, it made CCing her too difficult, especially since that's one of her main forms of counterplay.
Yep.
Another thing we consider when we hear a champion feels bad to play against is their intended complexity. We try to make a healthy mix of high, medium, and low complexity champions. In this way,
and that's completely fine. Like, it makes sense to have some easy champions, some medium champions, and some hard champions to play in terms of mechanics. So I'm completely fine with that.
Whether you like mechanics,
and I like that, honestly.
Point and click simplicity, or something in between, there's a new champion.
But something I will say is the fact that a mechanical intense champion should always be more rewarding to play than a simple champion. And a good example of that is Nidalee. I feel like Nidalee is a champion that you need to play so insanely well just to be able to do something in the game, and it doesn't quite feel rewarding because with Nidalee it's all about like landing the spear, like basically position yourself so that the spear is coming from a position where the enemy doesn't have any vision, because if the enemy champion does have vision, it's pretty easy to dodge Nidalee spear unless you're like slowed or CC'd. And then on top of that, you need to like basically do these like intense mechanical combos from when you're transitioning from human form to cougar form and then jumping in and then jumping back. And yeah, the champion is just very, very like skilled. So the champion just is so much harder to play than a simple champion, like let's say Nunu or Mumu. But it doesn't feel like rewarding to play a champion that requires so much skill when you can pick a champion that is just simple and broken. So I feel like they should make it so that high mechanical intense champions are hard to play, but also rewarding. Not to the point where they're completely broken, but almost there. And then with a simple champion should never be broken. That would be the worst case scenario. And we saw that with Turbo Chem Tank meta in the jungle, which was, I think it was earlier this year. It was earlier this year where it was Hecarim, Udyr, who else was it? Mainly just those two, but I think there was like one or two more. And those were just Skarner. Skarner was also in there. And that was because Turbo Chem Tank was just so broken. And all those champions, like that I just mentioned, are just not skilled whatsoever. They're very simple champions. And those type of champions should never be broken. They should be strong. They shouldn't be feeling like completely useless just because they're simple. They should be strong, but they should never be stronger than a high mechanical intense champion if you're performing like well with the mechanical combos. Because then there's no point in being skilled at the game, because you can just pick a champion that is unskilled.
For example, with Vex, we wanted to create a champion that was fairly easy to pick up, and we're happy to see she's hitting that mark. But beyond just how complex a champion is to play, there's also how difficult they are to understand. We want new champions to have unique gameplay, but you shouldn't need a wiki to know how to play with or against them. Learning counterplay is a skill test we do think is important, but knowing what a champ can or can't do shouldn't be a part of it. This clarity is something we haven't always hit the mark on, especially with champions like Aphelios, who not only has a complex kit, but was also lacking UI clarity.
I mean, till this day, I still don't know exactly. I know the weapons, but I don't know the difference between them.
Has clear counterplay and isn't confusing.
And I've played the champion once.
We're still trying to find that line, but we want to get to a spot where new champions aren't just numerically balanced, but that you all feel they're fair to play against. Beyond new champion releases, this season we've seen a wide variety of picks in every role. We've also seen a healthy improvement in diversity of playstyles across roles, especially in jungle and top lane. Some of this is due to direct champion changes, such as the kit adjustments that enable picks like Jungle Darius, Brand, and Morgana. New items like Anathema's Change and Hullbreaker have also had a positive impact, especially in top lane where we're seeing a ton of champion diversity. And finally, we know that some champion classes have been struggling after the item system update, and we've been working on some solutions to help them out. And this brings us to our plans for preseason.
Okay, so overall, the game state itself, I would say the game state is in a decent spot right now, and some exceptions is of course that some champions are a little bit too overpowered and some are pretty much completely useless, but overall I would say that the game state is acceptable. It is acceptable from Riot to say that this is the current game state to play in ranked, and people can't complain about it too much. So I feel like the game state is fine. More or less.
With that, I'm going to hand things off to Brightmoon, who will go more in depth on the upcoming changes.
Now we go into preseason.
Hey everyone, I'm Brightman, the lead producer of gameplay on League of Legends. League is like a house. Sometimes we need to do a big renovation to keep it working well, like when we overhauled the item system. And sometimes we just need to add some new furniture. For this year's preseason, we're sprucing things up with improvements to our existing systems, like items, runes, and the Elemental Rift. Let's start with our plans for items. While some champions and classes have lots of build options, we've still got others that don't feel like they've got a mythic or legendary that really speaks to them.
Yep.
So we're going to be adding some new items and tweaking some others. This will include 2 new mythic items. The first one is a support tank item, perfect for champions that want to get aggressive and charge into the middle of a fight. When you immobilize an enemy champion, all nearby enemies will take increased damage from your team for a short period of time. The second new mythic item is built for mages who are looking for a little more survivability. It grants damage reduction that lingers for a few seconds after you get hit, and while the protection holds, you'll also get ability haste. We think it'll be particularly good for longer range mages who need a mythic that helps them survive a dive rather than pile on extra damage.
Okay, so the first one, the support item, I'm completely fine with. Like, as long as the numbers are not too broken, I feel like that's fine. Because right now all supports, like tank engages, are just going Locket. So if you can find something that's better than Locket, I mean, completely fine with me. Just don't make it too overpowered. The second item though, I agree on the fact that mages do need mythic items because mages feel a little bit underwhelming to play. Not all mages, but some mages. I will say that giving the mages an item that makes them take less damage and give them more survivability is really the worst mythic item that you could possibly design. And I'll give you the explanation why. Mages typically have quite a bit of range, will most likely have more range than most other champions. And they already do have Hourglass. So they have Stopwatch already, so that's one thing. They have Arm Guard that gives them armor. They can go Exhaust or Barrier as a summoner to be defensive. And then they have Hourglass whenever it's upgraded, which champions will typically do as a second item after the Mythic. So imagine a mage champion that can then go the mythic item that makes them take less damage, and then they go hourglass on top of that. It will feel so underwhelming to play as an assassin against a champion that can just build such defensive stats that you are pretty much unkillable. That pretty much makes you have no counterplay. So that mythic item is terrible because you already have hourglass. If you remove hourglass, then that's fine. But I really think that there's no way that Riot is removing hourglass or stopwatch from the meta. So the second mythic item for mages, terrible idea. Please don't do it. It will literally be depressing to play against.
We updated League's item system. We wanted to give every champion strategic choices in every game. We still think that's the right goal for Mythics, but our thinking has changed when it comes to legendary items. We think it's okay if some champions build the same legendary in most games if it's a perfect fit. But we also want you to have plenty of options, which is why we're improving legendaries for mages, assassins, and tanks. For example, assassins can look forward to a new legendary item that gives ability haste, and also refunds a portion of their ultimate's cooldown with enemy takedowns. Tanks that can never...
Okay, so the issue with assassins is the fact that Goredrinker and Conquer is just too gold efficient and basically too good. So you need to pretty much nerf Goredrinker, maybe not nerf Conquer, but nerf Goredrinker, or buff the assassin items, so the Lufadi items, so the Prowlers. So when they nerf Prowlers, it essentially became less worth than going Goredrinker. Sure, sometimes it can still be good on some champions, etc. But overall, that nerf was pretty much the only good mythic item there was. Duskblade in Season 10 was really, really good on assassins, and in Season 11, it is worse. And that's why more people are just going Goredrinker, because Duskblade overall is like worse. But some champions will still obviously go Duskblade because they don't have anything else to do. And then there is Eclipse, and Eclipse, you have pretty much, well, you nerfed it, and then you buffed it, and then you nerfed it. So Eclipse is also just overall worse compared to Goredrinker. So giving assassins a new legendary item that gives you ability haste and refunds cooldown on your ulti or whatever, that's not the issue with assassins. The issue is the fact that assassins are not going assassin builds anymore because it's not as gold efficient as going for a bruiser build, because the bruiser build will almost give you the same amount of damage and it will cost less gold and it will give you more tankiness compared to going the full lethality build, where sure you'll have a little bit more damage, but it costs more gold to get those items and you're less tanky than that. And that's basically the issue with assassins, and that's what you guys need to fix. You don't need to introduce new items if you don't fix the current items that already right now are simply not balanced when it comes to assassins compared to bruiser builds.
Never get enough mana, we'll be happy with a new legendary item that grants bonus health based on total mana, and also burn some of it to create a shield whenever they immobilize an enemy. And finally,
the tank item I don't really see an issue with. The only issue with tanks is the fact that Sunfire feels really, really good if you're playing against immobile champions, but if you're playing against mobile champions, it feels pretty bad. Frostfire seems a little bit underwhelming with the slow, and I don't remember the last tank item because, yeah, I don't know. I don't usually play
mages who are
tanks.
tired of being denied their hard-earned kills can rejoice. They'll be receiving a new legendary that grants Magic Pen against recently shielded enemies.
This is again fine because you have Serpent's Fang for assassins, so giving mages an equivalent is actually pretty healthy. I don't have an issue with that either.
As for runes, we think there are some good targeted changes we need to make. Most of all, we feel the Inspiration Tree's identity has been pretty unclear, and we'd like to broaden its keystone use cases. For example, we're reworking Glacial Augment to double down on its fantasy of slowing down enemies. We are also making some modifications to Lethal Tempo to lean into its attack speed fantasy and give it a more distinct use case in the Precision Tree. Up next are bounties. Champion bounties give teams who are behind a way to get back.
Champion bounties is generally a pretty boring introduction of the game because it slows the game down when you are doing well, and I don't like that. So what I like instead is games to be fast-paced, and I like the games to be in solo queue. I want them to be solo carry potential. I'm not saying that you should be able to completely 1v9, but don't make it so the fact that the highest percentage that you can carry a game is like 30 or 40% as an individual. Make it maybe a little bit more. Maybe make it like 50% or 60%. Make it so that it's actually rewarding, and if you play well, that it actually makes a difference even if your team is underperforming. Because right now how bounties work is the fact that if you're playing well and the enemy team ends up killing you, they basically get a ton of gold back, which stalls out the game, makes the enemy able to come back off making one good play, whereas you have maybe made like 4 or 5 good plays in a row without dying. And that again stalls the game, makes the game longer, and just makes the game a little bit more boring, in my opinion. Instead, make the game a little bit more snowbally. Sure, you can introduce the shutdowns, but reduce the amount of gold that it gives. Simply because that it's really boring to play a game that lasts 30 or 35 minutes. If you played really well for the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then because you make one mistake all of a sudden, then the enemy team is essentially like coming back. And that's the issue that I have with bounties. They should nerf bounties in the sense that the amount of gold that it gives, or make it harder for you to have a bounty, and make it so that you can carry harder yourself and don't have to rely on your team as much as you do currently. So I think the bounty system is overall pretty bad, and it could be a lot better if you just nerf it. Don't completely remove it, because you should introduce some way of comebacking to have late game champions being actually viable and not just like early game champions to stomp. But right now, I feel like bounties are just completely unfun with the current system. But okay.
Back into the game without being a straight shot to victory. And
You see here, Veigar gets like 1,000 gold. That means if the Kai'Sa killed the Veigar, he would get 300 gold. But because Veigar kills the Kai'Sa and Kai'Sa's fed, that's 1,000 gold. Like, what's the point of that?
Here, we're adding a second way for teams to try and make a comeback.
And this is just even worse. A second way of comebacking? Great. Like, stall the game out
Objective
even more.
bounties will work like champion bounties, except you cash them in by taking map objectives, like towers or Baron. They ramp up slowly when the enemy team lead grows, and the bounty is shared with your whole team, regardless of who claimed it. Taking objectives really is the best way to come back when you're behind, so we want to help make that a clearer and more rewarding strategy. That said, if a team is really far ahead, objective bounties won't change that. Being the better team should always get you a win, so we'll be watching the new bounty system closely to keep things in check.
You see how he said that the better team should always win? So, yes, the game is team-oriented, but Riot has to realize that we are playing solo queue, and we like the sense of us carrying the game. So, the better team is not the guy who has a top laner who's 5-0, and then has a jungler who's, I don't know, 1-0, but then has a mid laner that's 0-3, and a bot lane that's combined like 0-6. That's not the better team, because the mid and bot lane are not doing good. And on the enemy team, it's the mid lane and bot lane that are doing good, and the enemy top and jungle that are doing bad. So I don't like the fact that it's the better team that wins. I mean, sure, the better team should always win, but make it so the fact that I can also carry my team, or at least put my teammates also in a better spot, or make it so that I don't have to rely on them being 2-0 or 3-0 or winning lane if I'm winning my lane hard enough. So yeah, introducing another way of comebacking with objective bounties. Again, it's just a terrible, really boring idea, because yeah, it just makes you able to, it just forces you to play more flawlessly without making mistakes. Otherwise the enemy team is comebacking, and then it's just gonna feel terrible because you worked 10-15 minutes to gain your lead, and you throw it away in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever.
Finally, let's talk about our biggest addition this preseason.
But okay,
dragons.
New dragons.
We really like how each dragon creates unique terrain, grants powerful buffs, and adds more strategy to the mid and late
I like the
game.
dragon system.
So this preseason,
I think
we're
Soul
adding 2 more.
is a bit useless,
Up
but
first is
whatever.
the Hextech dragon.
The system itself
When
is
your
good.
team defeats it, you'll all gain additional ability haste and attack speed. And if you claim the soul, you'll receive a chain slow that works kind of like Static Shiv's passive. When this dragon takes over the rift, it creates Hextech gates that can transport you to set locations across the map. The second dragon joining the party is Hextech's darker sibling, the Chemtech Drake. When you slay it, your team will deal increased damage when your HP is low, letting you turn around those close team fights. This dragon soul provides a second chance at life. Well, sort of. When you die, you'll enter a zombie state, where you can still cast abilities and continue fighting when you'd normally be looking at a gray screen. And when the Chemtech dragon putrefies the map, it creates camouflage zones in fixed locations. These dragons might seem more impactful than the current ones,
Yep.
and, well, they are. Our goal is to add more unique encounters and meaningful strategy to the mid and late game. That said, these are some pretty big changes, and we're ready to adjust if they're making too much, too little of an impact. You can expect to see all of these changes on PBE in a couple of weeks, and we'll be looking for your feedback in the months ahead.
Okay, so the 2 new dragons are probably overall better. I mean, the first one gave ability haste and attack speed. The second one gave more damage when you're low on HP. And for the souls, I mean, one gave like a static shiv proc, and the other one gave you the zombie mode where you just survive, or where you revive as a zombie. And then the zones, one were teleportation. That is just straight up really bad idea. I mean, already you have the blast cones. Now you're gonna put like teleportation on top of that. So no, we already have the blast cones, and that's fine. Don't make even more with moving around the map or jumping over walls that like you wouldn't be able to otherwise if you don't have it in your champions kit. So the one thing I do like is the fact that they're adding more dragons. I like that, because I usually always end up getting Cloud Soul, and I hate getting Cloud Soul, so I would like to get some other souls. But please balance it out a little bit more when it comes to the dragons, because right now the dragons itself, picking up a single dragon doesn't feel terrible, and the terrain doesn't feel terrible. It's the souls where I feel like there's a significant difference in the strengths of the soul. So I want that to be balanced out a little bit more, and it's the same thing with these dragons. That sure, individual dragons can be slightly stronger, I don't have a problem with that, or the terrain. But as soon as when it comes to soul, I want it to be the fact that every soul makes sense to contest, because right now Cloud Soul feels pretty underwhelming, and sometimes you can even give Cloud Soul to the enemy team just so you can get to Elder Dragon, to be honest. But that's how I feel personally, but let me know what you guys think about all these changes that we heard so far when it comes to Champion State, the preseason changes, the item and runes, the bounty system, and the dragons.
Outside of preseason, something we've heard from all of you is that you'd like more ways to express yourself and your achievements in League. For some of you, ranked is how you define your progress.
Yep.
And that's great. We don't want to change that.
Good.
But for those of you who aren't focused on the rank climb, there aren't great ways to express your own progress.
I personally feel like
Champion
that's a
Mastery
very
and Eternals
small
help you show
percentage
off
of
your
player base,
skills
but
on a
sure, if
particular
that's
champ.
what Riot is making money
They
off,
don't
that's
tell the
fine.
story of your broader League legacy.
I never
The
got
new
into
challenges system
Eternals
shows
personally,
you
but
just that.
I don't have a problem with them, so I feel like it's
Challenges
fine.
rank up over time, showcasing your increasing mastery and legacy across a bunch of different systems, modes, and gameplay, making it a little different than just a standard achievement. We want to highlight not just your rank and champion mastery, but also your inventiveness, breadth of play styles, collection, and everything else in between. Want to showcase your knack for never dying in ARAM? Or how great you are at killing minions in SR in the first 10 minutes? Maybe you've collected over 100 champions, or love participating in events. All of this is now possible to track and display your progress with challenges. You'll get the first glimpse of challenges when they hit PBE next month, and the full system will launch early next year. That's all I have to share with you today.
Challenges is not something that I have a problem with. It's not something that I personally care about, but it doesn't hurt adding it. So again, it's like a bonus feature. I'm sure some people would care about it. I personally don't, and I think majority probably won't. But again, it doesn't hurt, so I'm fine with it.
And here's Safe Lock to
It's not what I was looking for in this, because I think there are some other things that are more important, but it doesn't hurt it, so it's not too bad.
When it comes to game modes, one thing we've been hearing from you all is that you'd like more variety in the modes we bring back alongside events. So let's talk about it. To start, we actually agree that the existing rotation of game modes can make some of the most popular modes like Earth and One for All feel a bit stale. Some of you have asked why we just don't bring back some of our other older game modes like Star Guardian Invasion or Ascension
These were
to
fun.
mix things up. And the answer is that bringing back old modes isn't as easy as flipping a switch. League is constantly changing, which means all of our existing modes require constant upkeep. For example, when we released Yuumi, we had to figure out how she'd function in One for All. What happens when a Yuumi attaches to a Yuumi who is attached to a Yuumi? Because of upkeep like this, we have to be very selective about the modes we maintain. And right now, there are just too few popular modes that feel worth the investment compared to making brand new modes or updating more resonant ones for you. We've mentioned this before, but we think the sweet spot for game modes are ones that amplify champion fantasies and really build on what you love about your champs and Summoner's Rift. So moving forward, we're focusing on adding more game modes that hit this goal. And to that, let's talk about Ultimate.
Okay, so the first thing, when it comes to game modes, I like the game modes that I've been seeing throughout the time that I've been playing. But some of them are now never gonna come back, and I saw a video on it that some of them are just never gonna come back. And as she said here, that because of the game constantly updating, they can update for these special events. So what I personally would like is bring back the events that you haven't had for like a year or two, and keep it in the rotation, but just don't update them. Like, if it takes too much resource and too much time and effort from Riot Games employees to update or maintain these game modes with all the new stuff that has been added, then just simply don't, because it's not a core part of League of Legends. These special events are not a core part of it. It's not like you'll get better at ranked, or you're gonna have a better MMR, or you're gonna be better as a player from playing these special events. It's just completely for fun, have a different experience. Usually you'll play this with friends. So for me, I would rather have more rotating game modes every year rather than having the same ones come back multiple times, because I probably already played the game mode, like if it came out 4 times, I probably played it the first time and maybe the second time. If it comes out the third and the fourth time the same year, I'm probably not gonna care too much about it because I already played it. So for me, I'd rather have more game modes being released throughout a year, and then just have them being rotated a few times less, and don't update them. Like, I don't have a problem with, or just slightly update them. Like, you don't have to make them completely perfect and completely balanced, because it is just a for fun experience. So yeah, that's just my personal opinion. I'd rather have a game mode being rotated 2 times every year, and maybe 1 new game mode each year being introduced, rather than having the same game modes being rotated 3-4 times and then pretty much never getting a new game mode. I feel like that's pretty boring. That's why I don't personally care too much about the special events. Sometimes I do, but it's rare, and it's definitely not every event that I'll care about.
Spellbook. First and foremost, you all seem to really love this one. It was one of our highest engagement.
I didn't even
modes
play
ever, second only to
Ultimate
Earth.
Spellbook, but it looked
Beyond
funny
popularity,
actually.
We're super happy with how long you spent making oversized champions with Cho'Gath Salt, and by that we mean the total amount of time you spent in Ultimate Spellbook stayed high throughout the event. That gives us confidence that it's worth keeping around.
Yeah,
That said, there are some clear areas of feedback that we want to address. Junglers were forced to take Smite and another ultimate, which meant they couldn't choose another summoner spell. They also missed out on a lot of exciting plays during the laning phase because they were stuck clearing camps. Beyond that, we also heard that games started to feel a little repetitive due to the small number of available ultimates. And we agree. So, this winter we'll be bringing back Ultimate Spellbook with a bigger ult pool. We'll also be making some adjustments for junglers to ensure that your experience in Ultimate Spellbook is just as fun as everyone else's. If you'd like to learn more about our approach to game modes, you can check out the dev blog that's coming out today. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you're enjoying Worlds as much as we are, and for any
Okay, so this is pretty much the video. I see that we reached pretty much a half-hour mark, which is pretty insane. Most of you guys probably clicked off, but if you made it this far, then just type I saw it in comments. And yeah, then you're just a legend for watching a half-hour reaction video. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the update and what you guys would like to see in preseason and in season 12. And then yeah, if you like the video, then press the like button, comment, and if you want to see more, subscribe. And yeah, thank you for watching.